Welcome everyone. I, Harshal Desai, on behalf of Elets Technomedia Private Limited and the Banking and Finance Post magazine, welcome you all to this panel discussion at National CIO Virtual Conclave. We are really glad that all the eminent speakers in this panel discussion have taken time out to join us today at this conclave. I would like to inform you all that the Banking and Finance Post magazine is a bi-monthly magazine that covers information technology and digital mechanisms which are there in banking, in fact, in entire BFSI domain. We cover them. We cover interviews, opinion, article, guest column, stories, latest trends and technologies from the BFSI sector in this monthly magazine. We are also glad to inform you all that our portal is also very popular and receive thousands and thousands of people visiting every day who join us on our web portal and other social media platforms to understand more about the banking technologies. We are really, really glad today. I'd like to introduce all the audience to the panelists which have joined us. I'll start with Mr. G. Naga Mohan, Chief Information Security Officer from Bank of India. Welcome,
Hi.
Mr. Naga.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Mr. Biju K, Chief Information Security Officer from Federal Bank. Welcome, Mr. Biju K, for this interesting panel discussion today. We have also been joined by Mr. Akhil Verma, Chief Information Security Officer from Airtel Payments Bank. Welcome, Mr. Verma, to this panel discussion.
Thank you.
I would like to welcome Mr. Vinod Kumar, Chief Information Officer, Fino Payments Bank. Welcome, Mr. Kumar, for the panel discussion today. Thank you. We also have Ashton de Cruz. He is Chief Administration Officer, Chief Growth Officer, CISO, and Head CC&S Governance at Natwest Markets PLC India, the Royal Scotland Group. Thank you so much, Mr. de Cruz, for joining us today.
Sure. Hello, and everyone.
And we have our industry expert from Fortinet, Mr. Alain Sanchez. He is the Chief Information Security Officer and Senior Evangelist for Europe and Middle East and Africa region. Thank you so much, Mr. Sanchez, for joining us today for this panel discussion on Zero Trust, a great approach or bad wording. This is a very interesting subject indeed. The COVID-19 pandemic has seen a peak of cyber attacks, including ransomware, botnets, and even adaptations of the old Mirai malware. Amidst this chaos, Zero Trust emerges as a pillar of superior cybersecurity, providing a way to dynamically access whether any device, application, object, or entity should actually access network resources. And if so, which ones? This approach is fundamental to modern identity and access management. But does it mean companies will have to stop trusting their employees? That is the question, customers and the partners. So this is the subject. We will start this panel discussion with a presentation by Mr. Alain Sanchez. He is, as I informed earlier, EMEA Chief Security Officer and Senior Evangelist from Fortinet. So I'll first invite you, Mr. Sanchez, for the presentation, and then we'll start our panel discussion. Over to you, Alain Sanchez.
Thank you very much, Harshal, and I'm really honored to be part of this panel with such prominent people in charge of a so respectable institution in the banking sector in India. Thank you so much for inviting me to this. As Harshal just said, Zero Trust can be a very powerful concept, but it's also a funny name. So let me crack this nut to start with. This does not mean that we are going to stop to trust our customers. And I believe that trust is one of the value of the bank in general over the world, and particularly in India. So I am not here to say stop to trust your customer. I am here to share with you this concept that enables us to permanently, in real time, have the resources, the users, the applications, every single entity that connects collaboratively on the network to produce value has to earn the trust of connectivity in real time. So this is in a nutshell what it means, and let me perhaps precise a little bit of that. As CISOs, we're always between two, a little bit like in a paradigm, in a paradox. We do have to promote digital innovation because this is what our customers need. This is the demand of the market. You need to create the agency of tomorrow. And maybe the agency of tomorrow or the transaction of tomorrow is on a smartphone. You need to be able to expand the perimeter. You need to deal with an ecosystem of devices, objects, users, software, with architecture that are very distributed. And that complexity makes our job sometimes not so easy. And of course, it is a very regulated segment, and we all need to be compliant with the requirements of our industry, our governments, our stakeholders. So dealing with all this together is a little bit of the challenge of the modern CISO, particularly in the context of the threat. Just look at the red curve here. And this is the number of records that have been stolen in the past 20 years or so. And you can see 3 orders of magnitude growth. So very few domains are tasked themselves to face a threat that has grown by 3 powers of 10 only in 20 years. And you can see here that during the last 6 months, these bad guys did not take any holidays. There was no lockdown for them, if there was any. They have been taking advantage of platforms like this one to squeeze themselves into conferences, to steal information, to steal credentials of the people in line. And I looked at a very well done website, very comprehensive, that is the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team. And I was connected to it yesterday, and look at all the security alerts, look at all the current activities. July 16, some people were taking advantage of vulnerabilities in some of the ATM machines. And some other vulnerabilities has been also reported as part of the add-on in Google very recently, only 2 months ago in India. So the threat is real. It is not something that is just an argument for vendors to sell cybersecurity, and you know that very well. In India, according to the newspapers that has the Economic Times, that has a special CISO edition, it reports that there was an increase in cyber attacks, significant, almost 40% increase in the number of cyber attacks in the first quarter of 2020 from the previous quarter, the Q4 of 1920. So in that context, we have learned together a couple of things, and one of the things I would like to perhaps share with you today, before anything, is to tell there is no panacea in cybersecurity. I wish I could come and say, gentlemen, I have this box and you will be off the hook forever. It isn't the case. Cybersecurity has to be approached in a holistic manner. And here are 4 pillars that I would like to share with you that we've learned together as a community of cybersecurity officers. First thing, the merger between network and security. It's not 2 disciplines in one, it's one discipline. The second thing is you have to think of your security being dynamic. Don't be stuck into one part of architecture, but have your cybersecurity transcends whether you choose a cloud, another cloud, you want to come back, you want to host some of this information back into your data center. You don't have to rethink your security. It has to transcend this diversity of this beautiful opportunity that is represented by the cloud. Third pillar is the human brain is not enough, not fast enough, and sometimes our experience plays against us when some new threats are coming out of the network. So we would be stopping something that is legitimate, and we would be letting pass something that is not, based on some of the components that are dynamically changed and rearranged by the hacker to crack into our networks. So it has to be held by artificial intelligence. But what I want to tell you today about is the fourth pillar, is this idea that we need to control and know everyone and everything that goes on and goes off to our network. And we have to do that across the piece. We can do that across our physical appliances, in the cloud, whether or not you choose software as a service delivery mechanisms for your applications. And that collection of pillars creates what we call these holistic security fabrics. In the network, the trends are accelerating a lot. The authentication is continuously verified. It's not because, for instance, I access to this business critical application on the Monday that all the rest of the week and all the hours of the day, I need not to be authenticated. Most of the vulnerabilities take advantage of a door that has been opened and has been left wide open too long. So there's this need of continuous verification and identity of the person, right? That is part of the zero trust. You do trust your users, but you have to permanently earn, and they have to permanently earn the right to connect. From a certain percentage of teleworking, the Gartner said in February this year, they said there will be 30% of the remote force working from home. Look at the figures today. In your banks, you probably have twice as more people having and still continues perhaps working from home at this point in time. And the number of devices is not limited to bring your own device. There are thousands of cameras, thousands of sensors around the world that are connecting in and out to your network. I will be quick on the OT, but still in the banking sector, you use lots of sensors. You use lots of additional devices to secure physically your facilities, and you still need to have visibility of these devices along the way. So Zero Trust addresses the three dimensions: the devices, the users, and the management, to protect what is becoming very, very important at the moment is something that happens at the edge of the network. Because lots of transaction, lots of power, CPU processing, lots of communication streams are actually coming at the edge. Just think of 5G. One order of magnitude of speed. So a density of potential harmful malware coming your way a lot faster as it used to go. So you have to think of that holistically, being able to grant the access to the users, to the devices, and obviously the teleworking environment sets a new bar, a new challenges on the permanent authenticity of the presence, because we kind of all were in the same pressure, maintain the business continuity, but we have, as security officer, never have to trade speed or connectivity for security and vice versa. Let me finish on this one about this holistic view of cybersecurity. As I was saying, it's a collection of solutions that needs to be broad to face with these expanded perimeters that needs to be integrated because they need to talk to each other. The artificial intelligence needs to understand what is going in the mail related to some alert with a range of IP in order to bring you this holistic view of cybersecurity. And last but not least, this green icon at the top means that has to be opened. Holistic doesn't mean, in our view at all, monopolistic. We are very realistic. We understand you have network, legacy systems, legacy applications, and we never suggest that you would have to trash everything to adopt zero trust. Actually, we have developed an ecosystem of 350 APIs and connectors in order to be able to deploy zero trust portfolio across the piece. Here are some elements of the zero trust access portfolio, from authentication to the network access controller and to agents. Should any of you be interested in the details of that, I would be very honored to have a private discussion with any of you and any of those who are listening to us on this panel today, and to further the knowledge of what's really available in terms of components to deliver zero access network. Let me end up with a maturity model which enables you to deal with the entire collection of potential breaches and deploy zero trust access across the piece. From the reduction of the attack surface up to the active monitoring, from the basic visibility of the attack surface up to an integrated security operation center that enables you to have the visibility of all that. So here is my first opening of this panel, bringing you this overview of what zero trust means and does not mean. And I hand it over to Harshal for the rest of our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanchez, for this wonderful presentation. Indeed, I mean, they're getting started with the zero trust is indeed very significant, and there are a number of enterprises, IT shops are already doing many pieces of zero trust, and there are several multi-factor authentication and several permissions already in place. But it's not just about implementing these individual technologies. In fact, it is about using these and other technologies to enforce the idea that no one and nothing has access until proven they should be trusted. So it was indeed a wonderful presentation, and of course, we would like to understand more about your technologies and your solutions that Fortinet have to CISOs. Now we will formally start the panel discussion. So I would first request all the panelists to share their views in about 2 to 3 minutes. We heard Alain, Sanchez, and now I would like to listen from everyone. What is their idea on zero trust technologies and this concept? So I'll first start with let's invite Mr. Ashton De Cruz first to speak on about 2 to 3 minutes. Mr. De Cruz, your idea, please.
Yeah, thanks, Harshal, and good day once again to all my fellow panelists. Before I actually start with the question, I will just submit that the views and opinions I express here are being made in my personal capacity. They could and could not be subscribed by the organization I represent. Okay, coming back to the question then, and mainly the subject of this panel discussion, zero trust, good strategy or bad wording. I would like to replace that or with and rather, because it's definitely a good strategy, and it's not a very appropriate wording. Okay, it's not just it's not an or, so it's not this or that, it's an and. Okay, again, well put by Alain in his presentation, where he's touched upon various aspects of zero trust, etc. And my personal belief out here is that it is actually a framework, it is an architecture, and it is a strategy that needs to be imbibed within an organization. It's not a one-stop and a ready off-the-shelf product that one can take. It is a journey that every organization needs to go through. But the next question is then, do we really need to go through the journey, and are we ready for it? The answer to that is the pandemic and coronavirus per se has simply expedited what we would have always wanted to do, and we would have been forced to do, if not right away, then maybe 3 years down the line if the pandemic had not struck. And this is purely because we are no longer a perimeter based sort of a setup, which is like a castle and a moat sort of an organization, where the only threat is from outside, and once you are inside the perimeter, everything is safe. Now with globalization, majorly digitalization, use of AI, etc., we have become almost perimeterless as a setup. And because of that, we have increased the surface area attack multifold with the, and as the pandemic has brought about a lot of unsecured endpoints. And therefore, this is a journey that almost every organization, big or small, would have had to make. Pandemic has just accelerated, and coronavirus has just make us take that leap much faster.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
Ashton. Back
Cruz.
to you.
May I please request now Mr. Vinod Kumar, Chief Information Officer from Fino Payments Bank, on his idea on zero trust. Do we have Mr. Oh, I think have we lost Mr. Vinod Kumar? Is not there. I'll come to Mr. Akhil Verma, Chief Information Security Officer at Airtel Payments Bank. Mr. Akhil
Hello
Verma.
everyone. Yeah, I'm audible, I think. Yeah. Hi everyone. And means my fellow panelist, Mr. Ashton, very well he said. Definitely, whether we have to consider it as a technology or it's as a framework. So definitely means it's a journey type of things where we have to start that, and most of the organizations already might have started. But the thing is, zero trust from the security concept, you can say it's centered on the belief that the organization should not automatically trust anything inside or outside its perimeter, and instead must verify anything and everything trying to connect to its system before granting the access. So that is the one concept it is coming. The thing is, very well he said, whether any single solution or something we can put in some of the places like in perimeter level, endpoint level, whether means we can go ahead. I think answer is probably no, because it's a complete journey, it's a complete framework, and accordingly we have to take care each and everything. Now during this pandemic crisis, when our environment, or you can say our access points, it's a totally different. Earlier, it was everything is within organizations. People were accessing our crown gel and all those things within organization. Now, we are allowing that access from the outside. Definitely, that time, each and everything we have to verify and we have to update. Obviously, it's pretty means in that sense we have to just embark the journey and we have to continuously progress on that.
Thank you, Mr. Verma. May I please have Mr. Vinod Kumar's views on this? Mr. Vinod Kumar, Chief Information Officer at Fino Payments Bank.
Hi everyone, and the fellow panelists. It's a very interesting subject nowadays, actually, how the zero trust works, especially in the financial industry, and even if it is equally important for all the organizations. So I think in India, primarily on the digital side, we moved a lot, and a lot of digitization happened in the past, the last 2 to 3 years time. So all the banks or all the institutes actually taken care what needs to be entered into the network and how that needs to be treated, and what all things actually can happen from the internal network, and how that also needs to be treated along with the external data. So the zero trust actually is something which is very important for the banks, especially because we cannot actually let any of the request or any of the access which is coming to network as something which is trusted. So always actually the all banking segment, they ensure that all the perimeters are well protected, be it from a data center perspective or from an endpoint perspective. So zero trust is very important for them, and each and every entry is actually deep scanned. It is actually checked, and then only the transaction or activity is actually permitted. So the importance for the zero trust is not going away; it is actually strengthening and strengthening. To add some of the points what we seen from others earlier, maybe some 6 months back or maybe 1 year back, the hackers or others actually concentrated more on a data center kind of. But maybe from March, the COVID explosion actually given another opportunity. The endpoints are more open now. So and it is very easy for the attackers to get into the network through the endpoint, which may not be most of the time well protected. So the focus is actually changed from the data center to an endpoint. So the importance of zero trust of the endpoint is also increased as much it used to be at the data center level earlier. So I think so that's a brief. I can talk about how the zero trust uh, activities or the protection that used to be handled with the organization moved from highly concentrated from a data center perspective to across data center plus endpoint level.
Thank you, Mr. Vinod Kumar. Now I request Mr. Biju K, Chief Information Security Officer, to share his views in 2 minutes of on this concept of zero trust.
Yeah, thank you, and hi to all the fellow panelists. Actually, the other panelists have very elaborately discussed on the zero trust model and the necessity for that. So actually, adding on top of that, what basically is zero trust? So earlier we were adopting a concept like trust but verify. So currently, in this, as mentioned by Ashton, uh, with the digitization and with the enhanced usage of cloud technology, the boundaries had actually diminished. There were no boundaries. And with the pandemic in place, now even access to crown jewels, including the crown jewels itself, is enabled from anywhere in the world. So that's the kind of situation now we are in. So in this period or in this situation, zero trust very much helps to protect the organization assets. So while we were earlier adopting trust but verify principle, so in the zero trust model, what we are actually doing, like it was mentioned, it's a journey, it's a framework. It's not a one-stop solution. So we have to continuously monitor and we have to continuously validate every user, the instrument or device which he or she is using, and the attributes that possess, whether the device has the right kind of patches, whether the device voice is up to the required level. The rights of the user granted are up to date, whether he or she has been adequately authenticated before granting access. All these things forms part of the zero trust uh, activities. So basically, zero trust is very much a necessity nowadays. Mr. Alain in the initial presentation itself showed certain worrying graphs. So the way that attacks are going, it's going through the roof actually. So in this environment, so no one can take a chance that whoever is inside is always allowed one, always a trusted one. So even if someone is inside, still we will have to continuously monitor and validate the credentials, the attributes he is having. So for this, zero trust is very much helpful, and it is very much needed also, particularly for institutions like banks where we hold so much of customer data that for personally identifiable and sensitive data. So we are actually fiduciaries of data. So zero trust is very much a necessity nowadays.
Thank you so much,
That's from my
Mr.
side.
Biju K. Now I would request our speaker G. Naga Mohan, Chief Information Security Officer from Bank of India, to share his views on zero trust
Thank
concept.
you. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Alain, for a wonderful session. Sharp and sharp. And good evening to all the co-panelists. Just like machine learning and artificial intelligence, zero trust has become a buzzword nowadays. Yes, the zero trust is a wonderful approach. As Mr. Ashton says, I agree with him. They should be earned. It is a badly worded phrase also. Approach is wonderful, but the phrase is bad because, see, it's not reflecting the real motto of the principle. Say, for example, the child lock in a car. You try to protect your children. whether you are trusting your child or not. The question is, it's not the question of my trusting my child. Maybe I'm not trusting his capability to understand the danger, not trusting his capability to protect himself. That's why the child lock is there. Zero trust approach is also similar to that. Why I am saying this is 95% of cyber incidents across the globe are attributed to the human errors. So that itself indicates. So you are trying to make your systems foolproof by this zero trust, this one, such a way that even if somebody does a mistake, an error is there, you are not allowing him to do the error by just not giving him more privileges than what he is supposed to have. Just like least privilege concept. Okay, need to know basis concept. These are all the basics of actually zero trust policy. It's not that I'm not trusting him. It's that I'm actually trying to protect him from doing any mistake unknowingly. Okay, my own users, my own staff, say micro segmentation, the multi-factor authentication, the need to know basis, the least privilege basis, the whitelisting of applications and the privileged identity management. All these are actually the pillars of zero trust management. Who accesses it, what is accessed, why it is accessed, when it is accessed, and where from it is accessed. Where from becomes more important in the backdrop of work from home, and how it is accessed. All these points, everything is dealt by zero trust principle basically. And actually most of the people, what I would like to tell here is, they actually mostly work on the third layer, the network security, zero trust, this one. Many people I have observed that they focus most on the third layer, the network layer. Yes, it's definitely one of the foundations of zero trust policy. But unless the seventh layer, application level access controls, there in place, the zero trust principle cannot be full. So according to me, the zero trust policy is a foolproof system. Foolproof means the ignorance. Fool means it's not foolishness, it's the ignorance of the user. Also, actually should be, well, the system should be protected from the ignorance of the user. I have to put it this way. So that is what is zero trust. That's what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Naga Mohan. Indeed, thanks everyone for sharing their views on zero trust network and zero trust architecture. In fact, this is, if I'm not wrong, this is more than 10 to 12 years old concept. And now here the question arises that is because of the coronavirus, CISOs and CIOs have started using zero trust technologies a lot. I'll come to Mr. De Cruz first. You're on mute. You're on mute. And just to add one more thing to that, that is because of the coronavirus we have started using it a lot, the zero trust technologies. And one more thing, and to what extent we have been able to implement it now in our banks in our country, and how successfully.
Okay, two aspects to it. So the answer to the first is a yes, is a definite yes. But as I had touched upon in my opening statement, it is not that we were not moving in that direction. The virus has just expedited that move. So what would have ideally taken a couple of years has happened in a couple of months or maybe in a couple of weeks. So it's that fast and that accelerated pace that it has happened. But it's not that we were not moving that direction. Again, I know all my panelists here are from the BFSI space. So within the banking sector, zero trust is more mandate than maybe something like a manufacturing unit, etc., where the touch points into the systems are slightly lesser. But in the bank, we not only have insiders who are the staff and the employees, but all our customers also have touch points into our systems to be able to access the accounts, to be able to get into a net banking portal, into a mobile app portal. So these are the various touch points. So the banks were always in a way had moved way ahead in terms of digitization and had a very much larger area than maybe some other traditional segments of industry. Back to your question, the answer is coronavirus has simply accelerated the process. but everyone was primarily moving in the direction.
Right. Thank you. And now I'd like to ask Alain Sanchez. You deal with a lot of banks across the world. What are your views? How have you seen this trend during the coronavirus for the products and technologies? Let's say the zero trust technologies, growing in different countries and states.
Thank you for this question. I saw the pandemic as an accelerator of adoption of some of the technologies I talked about. And there was a little bit of a pendulum effect, and I believe we all witnessed it. In the very first day, it was business continuity no matter what. And sometimes without implementing even some of the zero trust elements that were already available in a given bank. But very quickly, I think the banking sector has shown one of the best reactivity and flexibility I have never seen globally. Very quickly, the banking industry understood the dangers and came back to a safer ground, still enabling the workforce to continue delivering banking services to the customers. And that was really remarkable. The speed of adoption, the cautious as well, and this combination of pragmatism and deep knowledge of what really matters. Because when you have so many things coming your way, you have to prioritize your actions. And I saw the banking sector across the world putting at the forefront of their agenda in terms of cybersecurity priorities, the safety of the assets of the customers, and immediately after, the ability to communicate as transparently as possible with their clients. So yes, zero trust adopted and accelerated during the pandemic, and remarkable adoption rate of the banking sector.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Uh, a clear plan and willingness to change are critical for successfully moving to zero trust environment. So my question is to Mr. G. Naga Mohan. What are the key steps that you would suggest to build a zero trust security model? You come from a government-owned banks, and we have seen how banks of India have invested a lot on securing its technology. So what are the 5 or 6 or 7 steps probably you may suggest to create a zero trust security model?
See, it's the most difficult question you have asked me. Practically it is nobody can say that I am full on zero trust security model. Impossible at any stage, not only today, in future also. It's absolutely a dynamic situation. So at present, within the given ambit of threats, we know, maybe there are so many, but what we know, I'm talking about only them. See, what we know, maybe the access control automation, probably that may help to a great extent. Actually, the Reserve Bank of India has asked for so many solutions to be put in place. Other than that, what I'm talking about is that only everybody is following that Reserve Bank's 2nd June 2016. It's like a Bible for every CISO. So what are the automation levels we have to do? Maybe the automation of access control I am looking at, and biggest challenge many people will face is the micro segmentation of network. It's not easy. Already the systems are running, and without having actually looking at your BCP and all disturbing the systems, micro segmentation becomes a great challenge. But that is the first basic foundation for any zero trust model to be approached, according to me. And the access controls, as I have already told you, Privileged actually identity management is one thing which we have to go for that. Particularly those people who have a lot of privileges to access the systems, their activity should be monitored. The PIM will help a lot, and of course, most of them are in place in many of the public sector banks. Just telling some of the points, and whitelisting of the applications is one thing I look at. This is also one of the most important things for need to know and least privileged things. As I have told you already, the access management automation will help a lot. Basically, the multi-layered and defense in depth. These are the general words, everybody use it, but these mean a lot. Basically, the multi-layered approach for the security, which is also actually can be termed as a defense in depth.
Right.
I put something in place and I cannot depend on that. I don't trust that security also. You don't trust maybe that also. I am going for another layer of security, then another layer of security. That is also zero trust model, in fact.
Right.
That's all. Thank you.
Right. So there can be, of course, be several layers of security, and when we implement these layers of security, we also need to understand the user experience. Mr. Biju, what are your thoughts? How, when planning a zero trust, the impact of model the user is going to have. Uh, how should we have a proper control over that also?
Yeah, Mr. Nagmohan very well explained, and particularly the situation in banks which have a legacy systems where computerization, automation started around 2 decades back. So while uh, while we all know about the difficulties or issues that a legacy institution has for micro segmentation, so when we say about zero trust, there are it's not about microsegmentation alone. That's the point I want to make it very clear. It basically starts with identifying the user, as I mentioned earlier, identifying his attributes. So when a user gets connected to the network, so authenticating him with multiple factors. That is, in addition to if your username and password, on top of that, a second factor, and that second factor itself, if it is a biometric kind of authentication, it's much more better. Then on top of that, the kind of device which is getting connected, is that device a permitted device? Is that device meets the security standards that the organization has defined? So
Yes.
all those things forms part of zero trust. So basically, as it was discussed earlier, with the pandemic, it's totally different to other kind of disasters or crisis which we see generally when we see talk about business continuity. In all other cases of business continuity, normally the disruption is for a few hours or a few days, and even in that case, the rescue is that we have a near DR or a DR or multiple DR. But in the case of a pandemic, it is totally different. Neither the near DR nor the DR comes into help. Everywhere it is a human accessibility that is the basic issue. All the systems are up and running, both DC, DR, and multiple DR, everything is up and running, but people are unable to come into the office and have the normal authentication mechanism. So in this kind of situation, the checking the attributes of the user and the user's device is very much important, and that helps us to ensure security to a great extent. Then the kind of access he is having, all the panelists discussed about the least privileges. That is very important aspect which everyone has to look into it. And earlier, if the user access review was done for certain critical applications, say bi-weekly or monthly, so in this period of pandemic, we'll have to shorten the periods that we user review, particularly the privileged users access review, and ensuring that again the automated tools like PIM, PAM, ensuring that the logs are integrated into the 24/7 security operations center is also a very essential requirement. Like zero trust is not only validating but also monitoring on a regular basis, on a continuous basis. So all these things forms part of zero trust framework or journey, we can say. And for legacy institution, it is always that it cannot be achieved in one go. We have to move step by step, and we have to give priorities for the crown jewels.
Right. Right. Thank you, Mr. Biju K. After the user experience, I would like to understand on and the next crucial thing, probably if probably you may all please agree to this, the choosing the right infra architecture for this. So there are several approaches which are adopted by different organizations. So be it micro segmentation or software defined perimeters and other zero trust proxies. So I'd like to understand from Mr. Vinod Kumar and Mr. Akhil Verma on the significance of choosing the right infrastructure to ensure good, viable zero trust technologies. I'll first request Mr. Vinod Kumar to share his opinion on this.
Thank you. I think the zero trust strategy requires a lot of changes, or it's facing a lot of challenges compared to the years that is gone. Primarily because the institution, how they're working, the approach to access the network applications, the environment, the users, and the kind of end user devices that we are using. And a lot of APIs get opened. So earlier it was very restricted, but currently the environment and the business requires a lot of APIs to be exposed to multiple organizations. That needs to be secure. Then the IoT implementation started. If you look at the architecture itself, it's having a lot of microservices. Earlier, we never used to have much of microservices, but a lot of other level of implementations. Containers came. So if you look at overall network and the workload and even the workplace, how the workplace is actually segmented, this is actually giving a lot of changes in past 1 or 2 years. So that actually changed the entire way the security or IT looking at how the implementation needs to be done. So if you're looking at the users itself, there are multiple types of users. Some working from office, some of them remote. And many of the people are actually using their mobiles for accessing. Some of them are using their laptop. Like that, a lot of things actually getting changed. So the kind of environment and the security that we used to put in place, that is actually undergoing a lot of changes. And the kind of security which used to be put in place, the architecture undergoing a lot of change. Earlier, especially in a banking environment, it used to be an on-prem solution. Today we have on-prem, cloud, hybrid solution. Multiple solutions are actually put in place. So I can say the entire industry is actually looking through a solution, or they continuously go through the architecture which is put in place, revise them, go through the documentation and control in place, and a continuous revise is actually happening there. And if you look at the global practice also, a lot of things actually are coming in place. The people are actually started believing in controlling that zero trust is very much important. Earlier, if you look at the people are actually looking at if a malware is coming, how can I protect? Now the scenario is totally changed. They're looking at if I get a malware within my organization, how can I stop that malware is impacting my business? How can I have a configuration that can control or a misconfiguration that can stop my entire day's activity? So that is the way the change happening in the overall architecture and the systems which are in place. So that's at a high level I can say, from the change and the trending and the seriousness actually given by all the organizations to protect the data in any organization. Pass on to Akhil, who can give more security standards.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Akhil Kumar.
Yeah. So while my opening remarks, I told whether we are having any single solutions which we can procure as a bank or as an organization and can achieve zero trust, I don't think means answer is not a yes. And Mr. Naga, also he also mentioned that definitely all these things it is to be required in the defense in depth. Now the thing is whether means also one thing I mentioned, it's a, like you can say, it's a framework. It's not exactly only technology like some solution. In this scenario, we have to validate each and everything, like any end user or staff or the customer, whether they are, means we have to validate from which device they are coming. We have to validate from which network they are coming. We have to validate probably from which application they are accessing. We have to validate probably, depends on our use cases, from which geographical locations they are coming. So they are the different scenarios. So all these things, whatever I'm talking, device, application, graphical, all these things are getting fit into the OSI layer, which we call as the 7 layer of my model. So all these difference in depth layer, it cannot be only I'm protecting my network layer. It's a done nothing, because nowadays it's a scenario. It's a very broad from which side we can get the attack or the intruder and something. It's a no. So definitely, what solutions we have to procure, or how the technology means. Definitely, I'll not talk directly the solution. Means what technology or what the implementation mechanism we have to adopt. It depends on my business use cases, whether which type of environment I'm using and how, what are my customers, whether I'm using or the mobile banking type of technology, whether I'm having brick and mortar type of branches, or whether I'm having some BC type of model. It depends. It's a organization to organization different. Even though in a banking sector also, like I'm from the payment bank and earlier I was in part of public sector bank. So it's a different, altogether it's a different game. Means we have to assess that what my technology stands, and after that we have to implement the technology or the protections or the controls in appropriate place. It's not a single bullet which we can achieve that thing. And second thing, just I want to touch upon your previous question, but definitely from the banking side. So one thing I want to say means whether if we can say zero trust, whether banking has adopted or not, I would say yeah, it's a technology perspective. Definitely, it could be now its implementation or some earlier few years we may have to start it. But from the process perspective, I think it is in a banking. It was for last means many years it is there. You can consider from the process side the verifications of the customer. Or one saying is there in the zero trust. Means earlier it was there, trust everything but verify. But nowadays one saying is there, no, don't trust anything and always verify. So that is the thing. So we are improving towards the technology side, and each and everything from the zero trust also we have to take care that way. If any traffic is coming, now it's not a time, okay, don't trust anything, because we are working from our home. Our network modems means whatever our internet connection, whether how much it is safe, we don't know. We are using after that our network means organization system, and it is we are hitting to our network. So all these places we have to take care. We have to be very cognizant, and accordingly we have to apply. So it's not about the user convenience. Okay, what the and Mr. Naga he also mentioned, it's not like we are suspecting or we are doubting our customer. We are protecting them to not to do the mistake. So that's what it's a means. It's a balanced type of thing. It could be some false positives, starting side, phasing, all those things. But at least organization as well as the employee, it will be safe in that way. That is my side.
Right, Mr. Akhil Verma, you're right. I mean, there are several technologies which are involved, and that is why the scale and scope of the work involved in implementation of zero trust framework cannot be underestimated. So now I would like to ask Mr. De Cruz, what are the challenges that we should be prepared for when it comes to implementing this zero trust framework? Mr. De Cruz, your views.
So challenges will vary across industries and across organizations, but some of the common ones that I could call out is to be able to find the right strategy and the right model to fit your frame, to fit your organization's needs. Okay, again, we cannot go with our intent of
Right.
saying let's be 100% secure, because we have never seen 100% in cybersecurity. So we should have something that is most apt and most suitable to the organization, something that is able to protect and to be able to risk manage my most vital assets and my crown jewels, as Biju has been saying, and being able to find the right framework. That's the first and most important point. Secondly is, and I think you touched upon it during one of your questions, is to be able to get a buy-in of everyone who's going to be involved in the entire framework and the approach, as well as the implementations, and finally the end users who's going to be impacted by the approach. Okay, so right, starting up from your top management, their buy-in, and luckily for us all in the CISO world, the coronavirus has helped that. But in a normal BAU scenario, it is to be able to get the buy-in and the support of your top management. Because if I go into a boardroom and I tell my top management from tomorrow, do not trust anyone, including your neighbor sitting next to you and the partner sitting to your right, and no one's going to believe me. Okay, so that's the top buy-in, and then how you embody it into the culture of the environment across your various users and functions. That's the next key important piece. And third is to be able to be proactive. understand your environment, and always stay in control. So I briefly summarized it at a very high level into top three aspects. Again, because what zero trust is just, it just says trust nobody. So you do not trust anyone and anything, both outside and inside your network. So these are the top three levels that are, and the top three things that you would ideally need to do. And as I said, then it then gets into dependencies and specifics of the industry and the organization that you're part of. For an organization like ours, which is almost 3 centuries old, there will be a lot of other legacy systems, manual processes, etc., that will have to be considered. For a next gen organization like Akhil's, which is a payments bank and a digital setup right up from day one, it will be a totally different requirement. Yeah, thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ashton De Cruz. Alan Sanchez, I'd like to understand from your perspective on the challenges arising from implementing zero trust technologies, and as a leading organization, how do you address those challenges?
Thank you for this question, and I think I completely concur with what my fellow panelists have said. There is one thing that perhaps I would suggest to add to this very accurate approach is education. No matter how big our performing our cyber strategy can be, they have to rally with them the users within the organizations, and the best way to rally them is to educate them and to build a common knowledge, not only in the SOC or in the NOC or in the IT department, but across the piece, so that people will accept, for instance, some of the constraints of a two-step authentication, some of the constraints of implementing other components of zero trust, but in all knowledge of the danger. It's like when the police explains the danger of speed, people would accept to reduce their speed, hopefully. When it's just, you have to reduce, like in some countries in Europe, it has been done with no explanation. People don't have the same knowledge of the danger, and then they don't accept the security as well. So let me perhaps, with the permission of everybody, conclude with that, because I need to be in another presentation on another panel. But education is key, and we are opening for free. Fortinet is opening for free all the lessons. We call it Network Security Experts. It's now a platform that is available online. Take advantage of it, because it's our common interest that our users get better and smarter in understanding cybersecurity. Thank you, everybody, for your listening and the quality of your arguments today. It was a real honor to be amongst you, as I said earlier. With all my apologies, I have to run into another call. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan Sanchez. Thank you so much. So, I, however, would like to formally interrupt the panel discussion with one more question: that what could be the possible disadvantages of zero trust, and how can that be curbed? While answering this, I'll also request the panelists for the concluding remark, and if I can request everyone to share their opinion in about 1 minute on this particular question. Your concluding remark and what could be the possible disadvantages of zero trust? I'll start with Mr. Ashton De Cruz.
Okay, zero trust, in simple layman terms, zero trust actually means having the right people access with the right access to the right resources at the right time and for the right context. Okay, so there are 5 rights in this. There's no left, there's no wrong, just 5 rights. And so what do they touch upon is 5 components. It's the user itself, it's the device from where they are coming, or the location, the device/location. It's also the application that they are trying to access, the session or the time of access. So what is the time of access? And finally, the data and the information they want to look from. Okay,
Right.
so as long as we have these 5 rights and these 5 components correct, we should be in a good place. At the same time, zero trust frame as a framework should have enough flexibility because requirements change dynamically, and they should be able to trust granularity. Okay, and the most important piece of that is to be able to trust beyond zero trust. And what I mean is that ultimately, if we want something to be working, as both Naga and Akhil have said it in the past, it's not that we do not trust the staff, the employee, the customer. It is just trust beyond zero trust.
Right. Right.
Okay. So yeah, again, that's my conclusion of it. Disadvantages, again, uh, far and few in between. To be honest, I can see more advantages of zero trust than rather than disadvantages. It is just, if at all there's a disadvantage, it's that one-time effort to be able to initialize it and have it first set up as a first time. Because if it goes wrong in the initial setup stage, it will actually create a lot of disturbance in the system.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Mr. Biju K, Chief Information Security Officer from Federal Bank. What could be the possible disadvantages of zero trust? And your
Harshal,
concluding.
sorry,
Yes, Mr. Nagaman. Yes, please.
if you permit, I need to leave now.
Okay,
Please,
sir. Please, I would instant then I'll request you if you can share your views in just 1 minute on this, and then you may probably please leave, sir. Mr. Nagamon.
no, I would like to leave now, please. Thank
Oh,
you.
okay, sir. Okay,
Please,
okay, no issue. Okay.
please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you. Mr. Biju K, coming to you again.
Yeah, I fully agree with Mr. Ashton. So more than the drawbacks, it's the advantage. It's about protecting the organization, its assets, and also protecting the individuals, because if someone else is misutilizing either the credentials which has been stolen or something like that, it's also protecting the individuals who are otherwise authorized to access the banks or the organization's assets. So when we talk about disadvantage, security is always a balancing act. So by increasing the security means little bit of inconvenience on the experience side. So that will always be there. And initially, like Ashton said, initially that will feel like little more inconvenience, but people has to understand that aspect. So that is where what we earlier discussed, the management buy-in is needed. So like when we are authenticating a device and checking whether the device has some basic standards, there can be cases where some devices are not authenticated and hence the user is not able to access at the required time. Similarly, when we talk about the multi-factor authentication, so if the authentication levels are less, it's always easy for the from a user perspective. So the user experience, it becomes little affected as and when we bring in more and more security features. So that is the disadvantage per se, we can say. That's all from my side as a concluding remark.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Vinod Kumar.
Yeah. So I will say it is not much of a disadvantage, but actually how that impacting the organization. The adopting the zero trust is takes a lot of time to migrate from one platform to other platform, or if at all we need to make some major changes in the processes, then actually takes a lot of manpower time, a lot of cost involved in actually most of the cases. That is one of the major aspect which I can say while we adopting zero trust. So more than that, actually the approach in implementing the zero trust demands a lot of policies and processes. We need to think about a lot of gaps that can happen. So this actually impact the entire entire organization plans, most of the cases, and then the implementation goes. So as everyone said, the pros part is a lot. So all the organization, I'm sure that nowadays go ahead with the planning and implementing a lot of perimeter or the endpoint level security to ensure that zero trust is available, and that is very much required, especially in a BFSI environment. We'll conclude with that here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vinod Kumar. Now I'll request Mr. Akhil Verma also to share his view on this.
So, zero trust implementation means, in my view, instead of considering as a silver bullet, it should be considered as a framework. Instead of considering as a some big bang approach, it should be in a phased manner. Instead of going in all the means the entire organization, it should be whatever my organization's structure is there, whatever my organization need is there. Accordingly, in slowly in all layers of defenses, we have to implement. It could be in a process side, it could be from the technology side, it could be from the uh, 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 technology process and the people side. Anything it could be. If we are going, and the disadvantage side means your second part of your question, if we are going as a like as any solutions and we are keeping, and after that we are just enabling it for everyone from this particular geography, from this type of devices, from this type of any IP or network, if any traffic is coming, immediately you block it. So I think it will create that unnecessary noise, and it may create the problem for the organizations for successful implementation of such technology, which is a very much needed. And definitely, as everybody mentioned, for any technology, any process, any solution implementation, top management buying is very much important. Tomorrow, if we are as a CISO, if we are going into the boardroom and we are telling, okay, we want to implement the zero trusted solution, so definitely ask questions will be there. Means what it exactly means. We don't want to trust anyone. So obviously it is going to be in a different scenario. So it is a process, and accordingly we have to implement in a phased manner. That is what my conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Akhil Verma. So that these technologies, that support zero trust are indeed moving into mainstream, and this is perhaps the best way to stop the data breaches. So it's we understand that these are very necessary technologies that we need to adopt, and the framework that we need to create for better security. We cannot thank you enough for all joining us today in this panel discussion. And with this, we here formally close this